Hey all, once again, welcome back to the layout. Today I have a weathering tutorial for you. We're going to take a look at how to weather two of the new Scale Train's ES44 AC Heritage units in HO scale. So let's go ahead and get started. These locomotives already look incredible out of the box. I'm going to show you in this video how just a quick weathering job that takes only an hour or two can really bring these to life and make them look right at home on any layout. To begin, we're going to add some Krylon matte finish to the locomotive. We'll mask the windows and lights of the locomotive and then give it a quick dull coat. This is going to take away that factory shine and make them look just like you would see out on the road after they've been in service for a while. It can be intimidating to add a dull coat to a factory painted locomotive, but this not only kind of tones down that glossy paint, but it also gives you a great base and smooth surface to apply the rest of the weathering to. Once our dull coat has dried for about an hour, we're going to come back with an airbrush. I use an airbrush by Iwata. It's certainly not sponsored by them. I don't even know how to say the name, but we found it. It seems to have great reviews and works well for us. It's a dual action, so you push down on the lever to activate the paint, and you can adjust the airflow by pulling back on the lever. The paint colors we're using are by a new brand called Email Color. Found them at our local hobby shop and they work well. We're using matte color 82, matte color 89, and then a matte gray color, which is number 75 as well. And I found that any combination of brown, tan, and gray really create a realistic road color grime. You can see it there in the top of the airbrush bin, the color that we've kind of mixed up here. I mixed it to about a milk consistency, which usually turns out to be about 50% paint that's already mixed and 50% paint thinner, and then applying very gradual coats to the underframe and also the, the top half of the locomotive as well, but really kind of focusing that on the trucks, the fuel tank, and the underframe parts of the locomotive where it's heaviest, just like in real life. After we've given that light coat about an hour to dry, I'm going to come back and give it one more clear coat. This is going to really seal that in before we move on to kind of the meat of the weathering here, and the part that is my favorite and really makes these locomotives stand out. As you've noticed, I'm kind of switching back and forth between the 8099, the Southern, and the 8105, the interstate locomotives. That's because I'm showing you that the same technique can work for just about any road name and locomotive. It's a quick, easy way to add great realistic effects to your locomotives. However, one side note here with the interstate unit is that I am going to actually remove some of that paint from the underframe. And the reason for that is that the silver seems to weather differently than the black that you might see out there on different colored locomotives. So what I'm actually doing is taking a stiffer brush dipped in paint thinner and slowly wiping that off. So in this case, I haven't actually added the clear coat to seal in the airbrush paint yet, and I'm removing it at least on the trucks and underframe and fuel tank with this brush. So I'm going to dip it into the paint thinner and then slowly just wipe it off here, but I'm going to leave all of the weathering on the overframe or hood of the locomotive. Coming back to the Southern, now that we've kind of caught both locomotives up to the same stage of weathering, I'm going to remove the handrails for the next step. While we let the interstate dry from its dull coat, we're going to go ahead and remove the handrails on all of the locomotives here. These are press fit handrails, so once you take a small X-Acto knife to pry out the end vertical handrail, you can pry out the vertical stanchions with just your hand because they're press fit into the shell. So carefully removing those, we'll set them aside. They're already dull coated and weathered, so we can just install them once we've finished our weathering job. Next is my favorite part of the weathering process, and this is effectively a wash to really highlight where dirt might settle in a locomotive, but we're going to do it in a little bit of a roundabout way. We're actually going to use weathering powders to achieve this, and you might have seen this in some of my previous videos. I've been doing it for 10 plus years and have great effects. I kind of discovered this technique by accident way back in the day and have been using it ever since. It works great to not only kind of highlight the details and everything that's molded into the plastic on these shells, but also to color the grills and to really just give it a nice wash over the entire locomotive. So to kind of real quick talk you through the process, I'm going to take some grimy black weathering powder. We use AIM weathering products, but you can really use any weathering powder out there, and then a soft, big brush. I'm going to cover the entire side of the locomotive after everything's been clear coated and dried. And once that's done, we'll come back and actually wipe away most of that dirt from the surfaces. What this does is leave some of that weathering powder in the crevices and the cracks and details of the shell. And as you can see, it really makes it pop and highlights it. When you compare the model before this was done to after, it looks incredible. And then when you compare it to prototype pictures as well, really kind of gives you that desired effect of making it look worn and used. And the reason they look like this in real life is when it rains, it kind of washes that dirt and grime, and it kind of settles in all the cracks and crevices of the real engine. That's really what we're kind of recreating here. So the reason it works is very similar to how it works in real life, to give you that effect, and it really creates a very prototypical look. One thing we're doing differently than I would do on a standard locomotive here on the interstate locomotive is we're also doing the same technique to the trucks and fuel tank and underframe. The reason for that is that they're silver, and kind of like we did with the paint from the airbrush, we're going to do the same thing where we coat it really thick and then remove the paint, or in this case, remove the weathering powder from the side of the locomotive. So you can see it really kind of highlights the detail in those trucks and makes them pop. So you can see here just a quick kind of in-depth look at how the dirt and weathering powder and grime has really settled into the trucks. We'll do the same thing for the roof, and then we'll come back afterwards and we're going to add a little bit more to the grates and then around the exhaust stack. I'll show you that here in just a minute. There's actually one area here on the long hood where I'm very specifically not going to wipe away any of the weathering powders. That's the radiator grills here on the top of the long hood. And there's so much air moving in and out of these vents that they often get dirty. They accumulate a lot of dirt and grime. That's why they're black on the prototype. So by not wiping it away, it's a very easy way to go ahead and color those grates black, just like you would find on the real locomotive. Once everything's dry, the water takes just a few minutes to dry up. I'm going to come back and add just a little extra weathering powder, a little bit of extra black around the smokestack, like the soot you would find from the exhaust, and that'll just about finish up the weathering powder aspect of the locomotives. We're going to do the same thing for both the southern and the interstate locomotives, and that technique will work for just about any paint scheme. And lastly, there's one really small detail which I wanted to recreate here on the interstate unit. For some reason, the number boards were they got really dirty really easily. They're almost a brown color. So I actually removed the number boards from the model, flipped them over, and on the back side, I'm actually using some brown weathering powder just to apply a thin coat to them. I'm going to clear coat them, and then I'll reinstall them into the locomotive, and hopefully that'll give us the desired effect. And as you can see here, it pretty much did. With the locomotive lights on and the room lights dim, if you go and look at prototype pictures of this locomotive at dusk or at night, you'll notice this looks just about spot on. And lastly, I think the most important of any weathering job is making sure that you clean the wheels so that these incredible looking models can actually run well on the layout. A lot of times the grime from the airbrush and the clear coats is going to build up on parts of the wheels, which could affect it running. So after you weather any locomotive, it's really important to make sure that you clean the wheels so that it runs smoothly. For this, I like to use just an old t-shirt that I cut up into little squares. You can also use a paper towel that'll do the same thing. And I'll very damply just put a little bit of paint thinner or Goo Gone or isopropyl alcohol on it, like a 91% alcohol, and that'll be enough to kind of take away the paint. So what I do is I turn the locomotive speed up to 100 and then use my hand to kind of control the speed as it rolls back and forth, turning the wheels over the cloth or paper towel and cleaning the wheels. So it's a quick and easy way to clean up the wheels, and after that, your locomotive's ready to go. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this quick and simple weathering tutorial with just a few steps on how to add a lot of realism to your Scale Train's ES44 AC locomotives. These are new locomotives and releases from Scale Trains, and I'll put a link to them in the description. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below. I'm always happy to help. And if not, I'll see you next time.